Okay, we start. Yeah. Start the class. When we try to introduce ourselves, all of us will start saying, I am. After that, we add our name to that I am. The name is given because of a particular form. I am is common. Name and form vary. This what is common, I, is the living entity, the life, that which is conscious of. Am is existence. So I am existence, consciousness, consciousness that exists, existence that is consciousness. And this I am, when it doesn't identify with the form or the name, like in the sleep, it doesn't have a mind. Where there is no mind, it's all happiness and bliss. So the I am is existence, consciousness, bliss. From here, when you try to believe that you are that form and the name, there's nothing wrong with the form and the name, but you lose sight of this I am and try to put the I am on that particular form and particular name. I am so and so. When you say I am so and so, if you remember, I am that consciousness, existence. There is nothing wrong even with when you are introducing with a name, but you should not forget what really you are. When you forget what you really are, assume you are the body and you have a form, then because body is finite, it's always struggling for security, competition, comparison. So in this struggle for comparison, competition, security, it can never be peaceful. It's all the time agitated, either with fears or sorrows. That is why the Shastra gives us different methods to tune ourselves back to this I am, detaching from this name and form, where you say I am, but that is a small I. This is a big I. So detach from the name and form, focus to the real I am, you experience absolute happiness and security, and then you transact in the world outside with the body. There you follow the relative rules, nothing wrong. You don't have to say, you all of us are same, you take my property. No, relative world follow relative rules. But the relative rules should always be in harmony with the totality, absolute, which is the ultimate dharma. When your pursuits of artha and kama, material prosperity and desires, is pursued with the memory that I am, you try to harmonize with everybody else because everybody is I am. There is no different existence, there is no different consciousness. At that time, since you see yourself in all, there is a natural harmony, there is a natural security, and therefore there is a natural affinity and love. Wherever these positive qualities of oneness, love, harmony is there, there is happiness and bliss. Where you see divisions, there is insecurity and sorrow. So this is because all of us by the Shastras are given certain rules by which you can harmonize yourself with that totality. They are called dharmas. The body has a dharma, mind has a dharma, intellect has a dharma. This body, when it deals with others, have to follow certain rules. Those rules should not disturb the harmony with the totality or the I am. Therefore, the dharmas, the values, should always be tuned to this ultimate dharma. This is the essence of the Gita. Therefore, the very first word starts with dharma kshetre, in the field of values. Last word in Gita is mama. And therefore, the essence of Gita is said by scholars, mama dharma, my dharma. Dharma means that which keeps me intact. When I am tuned to the real self, I am kept intact. For this sake, I should follow the relative dharmas in all fields. Therefore, they again say, dharma kshetre kurukshetre. In the field of dharma, in the field of Kurukshetra, in the field of Kurus, there they make a small pun and say, Gita says, kshetre kshetre, in every field, dharmam kuru, dharma kshetre kurukshetre, kshetre kshetre dharmam kuru. In every field, follow the rules of Shastra, dharmas. How renouncing the egoistic desires, values, sarva dharman parityajya, tuning to the real I am, mamekam sharanam vraja, aham tva sarva papebhyaha mokshayishyami masuchaha. I shall release you from all causes of sorrows. This is Gita. Moksha Shastra, how to handle your artha and kama, pursuits of wealth and desires, with Dharma Shastra, so that it can lead you to Moksha Shastra. That is Gita. Therefore, this is said to be Brahma Vidya. Brahma, great, glorious, biggest. Vidya, science, biggest of sciences, because every science gives you certain mastery over yourself and the external world and certain benefits. But they are all finite. If there is a science that gives total security and total happiness, that is the knowledge of the self. That is the science of the self. Therefore, this is called Brahma Vidya. A mere knowledge is not enough. You need techniques of trying to actualize it. Those techniques are called Yoga Shastra. Every science has two aspects, the theoretical and the applied science. So, at the end of each chapter, you read, Om Tatsat Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishasu, Bhagavad Gita, which is a Upanishad, Brahma Vidyayam, in the science of the self, the knowledge of Brahman, Yoga Shastre, along with the methods of trying to harmonize yourself with that. Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade, dialogue. All our scriptures are in the form of dialogues, question answers. Only through questioning you can learn. Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama Prathamodhyayaha. So this is Gita. And now where the problem started? Losing the knowledge of the real I am and having the knowledge of the false I am. It's a confusion. Since it's a confusion, solution is not in doing something, removing the confusion. The means and process of removing the confusion is through knowledge. Therefore, Krishna starts guiding Arjuna through the knowledge of the self, waking him up from his delusion that he is an individual with a body, name and form, because of which he sees killing and being killed and destruction and death. Krishna shows him nobody lives, nobody dies. Nobody lives, nobody dies. Therefore, the battle is not for killing anybody or being killed. Nobody dies. But the battle is to bring out all the negative values in your mind so that the mind gets purified and gets elevation. That is why in any battlefield, war, anybody dies, both sides, opposite Pandavas and Kauravas, all of them get Viraswarga. They get a higher plane of consciousness because in fighting the war, they have brought out all their prejudices, negatives outside. So therefore, fighting the war, fighting the battle of life is important. Who wins, who loses is not important. Nobody gains because all gains are finite. Nobody loses. All losses are also finite. But when you rightly fight the battle of life, you shall purify your mind from all negative qualities. And in a pure mind, you shall experience the real I am. That is the purpose. Therefore, knowledge alone can give this status of real I am, and hence Krishna starts teaching, though Arjuna's question was, should I fight or not fight? Krishna didn't answer, you should fight or you should not fight, because it does not matter fighting or not fighting. It matters to remove your confusions. Have the right knowledge. Hence, Krishna gives the knowledge of the Shastras. This knowledge has to be applied, reflected. Listening to the knowledge is called Sravana. Reflection is called Manana. Living the knowledge is called Nididhyasana. In between, the process of cleansing the mind is all called Yoga Shastra. So what was Arjuna's confusion? Since he saw himself as an individual with a body, he saw all the others also as Kauravas, grandfathers, teachers, son-in-laws, brother-in-laws, etc. He saw killing or being killed, death. That was the confusion. Krishna wakes him up and says, you are not a body with a soul, you are a soul with a body. Krishna wakes him up to that reality, to that truth. And here, first 47 verses of this first chapter, 10 verses of the second chapter Sri Krishna only spoke once. He did not open his mouth because Arjuna was hysterical. When a man is hysterical, no point in trying to talk to him sense. But Arjuna, being a practical man, starts analyzing the situation and sees, whereas he is so perturbed, Krishna is not perturbed. Therefore, there is some lacuna in my arguments. And hence, I should take my guidance from Krishna, who seems to be composed in spite of so much of destruction. This open-mindedness, this mind willing to learn, this mind willing to be disciplined, is called a disciple. So he says, Shishyaha te aham. I shall become your disciple. Shadhi, teach me, Mam, Tvam Prapannam, surrendering my ego, my thinking, my confusions to you. And he has analyzed and found that he has confusions of dharmas. Dharma sammuda chetaha. Karpanya doshopahatha svabhava. Please tell me, yet shreyaha tan nischitam bruhi. What is ultimate good for me, not what is pleasant. Pleasant is to run away from the battle. Since I am not able to decide, you please tell me. This is the condition of a spiritual student to begin the knowledge of the self. He should have viveka, analyzing capacity, vairagya, dispassion from outside worldly experiences, and a certain amount of calmness born out of shraddha, faith, tenacity, capacity to endure small pinpricks, and to keep the mind at one level. These are called Shama, Dhamma, Uparama, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhan, qualifications of a student. When you have this, you become a right student and you will immediately find a right teacher. You don't have to go in search of a teacher, because the whole purpose of God sending you to this world is for knowledge. So when you are ready for each step, at that time you get the right teacher. When you believe in only enjoying material life, you get an atheist. When you start feeling some powers, then you get some teacher to teach you in prayers, etc. Then some rituals, money making. You get the right teacher at the right time. When you are ready for spiritual teacher, the spiritual teacher, who is nothing but God, who is everywhere, appears to you externally and also teaches you from inside you. He is both inside and outside. Krishna and Arjuna were about 80 years together. That is the time, that is the age at the battle time. But Arjuna, since he was not a student ready for knowledge, he could not discover Krishna as the teacher. When he became ready for teaching as a student, he discovered Krishna as a teacher. This is the background. This background, Arjuna surrenders and drops all the weapons and says, I shall not fight. And at that time, Tamuvacha Hrishikeshaha Parahasan Iva Bharata Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Vishidantam Idam Vakyam Uvacha Idam Vachaha. At that time, Hrishikeshaha, the one who has controlled his senses, Prahasanniva. As though smiling, Bharata, descendant of Bharata. In the midst of two armies, Vishidantam Yadam Vakyam Uvacha. Confusion between two values of the two armies. Staying there between the two armies, when you ask the question to one who knows the self because he has conquered the senses, Rishikesha, he gives the knowledge to the one who is ready to receive it. Bharata, Bha is knowledge, Rata, one who rebels. So Bharata is not a mere Indian geographical area. Whoever rebels in the knowledge of the self is called a Bharata. So he talks as though smiling. Why? Because Arjuna sees destruction everywhere. Krishna sees only good everywhere. Everybody getting evolved. There is no destruction. There is no death. What you see will give you either dejection of Arjuna or the smile of Krishna. If you are carried away by names and forms, you will end up like Arjuna, dejected. If you are seeing the truth like Krishna, you will always be smiling. That's why Sri Gurudev says, keep smiling, refuse to worry. Keep smiling, refuse to worry. If there is any problem for you, sound and all, please let me know. If everything is all right, okay. So, if you see the names and forms to the exclusion of the knowledge of the self, you will only see death. If you see the self, you will only see the names and forms as a sport, Leela. Therefore, Krishna is smiling. And the smiling Krishna bangs Arjuna. Starts with a big bang. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Ashokyan Anvashojastvam Prajnavadanscha Bhashase Gatasun Agatasun Cha Manushojanti Pandita. Pandita, those who has the knowledge. Panda yasya saha pandita. Knowledge means the ultimate of knowledges. Other knowledges are only relative. They are called vidyas. The one who knows the vidya is called a vidwan. That is why in South India, no physician is called or anybody is called a pandit straight away. He's called a vidwan because he's anybody, any physician, any artist, anybody is still learning till he reaches the ultimate. Only the one who has got the ultimate knowledge is called a pandita. Others are all called vidwans. So here Krishna says, one who has the ultimate knowledge, pandita, gatasun, agatasun. Some breaths going, some breaths not yet going, in the process of going, seeing them. Some people have breathed their last, some people are breathing their last. Seeing this, they don't confuse themselves that the person is dying. If only that air keeps the person living, you can pump the air in any petrol pump.
Hari Om, uncle.
So therefore, it says, na anushocanti panditaha. External symbols of life, breathing and not breathing, doesn't confuse a learned man. He knows the breathing and non-breathing itself is supported by a prana, consciousness. You can, through yogic powers, stop breathing for some time, but you don't die. Because it's not breathing that keeps you living. It's the consciousness that supports the breathing, which makes you, the breathing only makes the functions possible in the system, the intake, the response, the digestion, the circulation, prana, apana, vyana, samana, udana. These functions are done by the prana, supported by, enlivened by the consciousness, the real self. So, Upanishad says, na pranena, na apanena, matyaha devati kastan. No human being lives by breathing or not breathing. He lives by itarena, by another force. Yasmin yeto upashrito, on whom this prana and apana depend. That is the consciousness. Therefore, what you think death is breathing and not breathing. That is not death. Breathing stopped, not breathing stopped, but the life force exited from that particular form. The life force exited from that particular form, the consciousness. And that doesn't die. Because it's not the body. Body is there. Why do you say dead? If somebody's body, the body is there. Do some process which they do in Egypt and keep it forever. Since the body is not the person is the consciousness, nobody dies, nobody lives. And hence the wise people don't grieve. So Krishna says, Achochan anvasochaha tvam. Ashochan, that which should not be grieved for. Anvasochaha, you are grieving. Grief also is accepted at a particular level. Some young man died, even if you are a wise man, you will feel sad for some time. But you will not be lost in that. This is what it means. Ashochan anvasochaha, anva continuously. Shochaha, grieving for. Ashochan anvasochaha, you are grieving for things that should not be grieved for continuously. Yes, thought, okay, Bhishma, Drona, people will die, so little sadness is okay. But to be lost in that is not allowed. Hello? Sadness, even for a wise man, is allowed. Somebody dies, a little sadness is allowed. Rama wept when Sita was lifted off, when Lakshmana swooned in the battlefield. That's all allowed. But to be lost in that, thinking that alone is the reality, that's not allowed. You should come back. Resilience. Ashocyan anvasochaha tvam. You should not think that is the reality. Why? Gatasu nagatasu nanushocanti pandita. Over the breaths lost or losing. The enlightened people do not grieve. But what are you doing? Not only you are not behaving as a pandita, but talking words of wisdom. Pragnabhaganscha bhashase ashochan anvasochaha tvam. Pragnabhaganscha bhashase. Speak words of wisdom. But gatasu nagatasu na anushocanti pandita. Pandita, wise people do not grieve over this apparent losing breaths and calling it death. Krishna bangs him. He says, wise people don't speak like this, yet you are speaking like a wise man, giving me all the reasons why this battle should not be fought for. So what does Krishna mean? You are speaking like a wise man, behaving like a fool. You are speaking like a wise man, behaving like a fool. Why such strong words for Arjuna who is depressed? When a man is hysterical, you have to give him a shock for him to come back to listen. Otherwise, he will not listen. He is obsessed with his thought. He should be shaken up. So Krishna says, you are a fool, talking like a wise man. Why? He gives the reason. See, in the second chapter, in the whole Gita, more so in the second chapter, you don't have to explain too much. This book itself says, that is why it's called Sankhya Yoga, logic, yoga through logics. So now, why is Arjuna wrong in grieving? He says, Natvevaham jatu nasam, natvam neme janadipa, nateva na bhavishyamaha, sarve vayamata param, natu eva aham jatu nasam, natvam na ime janadipa, nacha eva na bhavishyamaha, sarve vayamata param. Natu eva aham jatu nasam. I do not know non-existence, or at any time that I was not there, at any time that I was not there is not true. Natu eva aham jatu nasam. Jatu at any time. Nasam not being there. Aham, I, not one, not you. There was never a time you were not there. Na ime janadipa. Not all these things assembled there. Nacha eva na bhavishyama. There was never a time when I was not there, you were not there, nor all these kings were not there. There will never be a time when I will not be there, you will not be there, or all these kings won't be there. Sarve vayam ataparam. All of us ataparam, from hereafter also. Nacha eva na bhavishyamaha. We shall not cease to exist. Means we are there all the time. This is a statement Krishna makes, but this is not supported by logic or experience. Any statement should be supported by logic and experience. Shruti statement, yukti logic, anubhava experience. Here Krishna makes a statement. There was never a time I was not there, nor you were not there, nor any of these people were not there. There will never be a time when I will not be there, you will not be there, or any of these people will not be there. How the next sloka is. Next. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata deshantara prapti. Dhirastatranamkyati asmin dehe dehino asmin yatha, just as kaumaram yavvanam jara, he goes through, he passes through kaumaram, childhood, yavvanam, youth, jara, old age, tata dehantara prapti. Similarly, he does pass into another body, the Dhiraha, the brave man, the wise man, na mukyati. He is not deluded by the death of the physical body as his death. When we were born, we were 3 kg. Then we started misappropriating mountains of food. And today, after rejecting a lot, the essence of the food that we have taken is 80 kg. You were born 3 kg. Today you were 80 kg. Body change. Science also says, doctors also say, every few years, every cell in the body changes. Nothing is there what was there a few years back. The body completely changed. You yourself remember, I was as a child like this, as a school boy like this, as a college boy like this, as a youth like this. Now I am like this. You remember all the changes. Your body changed constantly and you experience the changes. You remember the changes. The body continuously changes. You experience the changes. You remember the changes. And therefore, there is an entity in the body who does not change along with the changes. As it grows, it needs a different body. The same body when it was a child cannot serve when he is in youth. Then slowly he has to withdraw from activity to contemplation. Therefore, in old age, the body again changes. When you have got enough from this body, you need another body. Therefore, you leave this body and take another body. The very reason you remember the changes of the various states of your body, you must have been there in all the changes, yet you did not change. If you had changed, you cannot remember. If you had changed along with the body, you cannot remember. The body changed, you didn't change. Same thing with the mind. Mind changes, you witness, you remember, but you didn't change. So the one who experiences the varieties, changes, does not change, is the real me, the consciousness. That will never cease to exist, even in the future. There was never a time that it was not there. Will there be any time that exists? Was there any time that existed, did not exist? Existence did not exist billion years before. So existence had boundaries. What was the boundary? Non-existence. So non-existence exists. Non-existence exists. Therefore, it is existence that supports the appearances which you call as existence, disappearances which you call as non-existence. The ultimate absolute existence is constant. This is also consciousness. This existence was there all the time. Since it has no beginning, it is there all the time. It will have no end also. That which has no beginning cannot have an end. This is called infinite. It has no boundaries. And therefore, there was never a time as our real entities where I was not there, you were not there, all these things were not there. There will never be a time when I will not be there, you will not be there, or the kings will not be there. Means all the time we are ever living. There is no death. That is what Krishna concludes for the first verse. Asyocha nanvasocha tvam prajnavadanscha bhashase gatasu nagatasu na anushocanti panditaha. So he gave the statement, then he gave the logic also. And experience is implied by trying to say, since you remember the various changes, you were there not changing. Now that topic is, for the time being, disconnected. He comes back to Arjuna's grief. Okay, everybody knows that there is a soul and nobody dies. That is why you do Shraddha. What is so big in that? Arjuna may ask. Everybody knows that nobody dies. That's why we do Shraddha. Doesn't mean the grief is unfounded. Because you ban me saying you are grieving for things that should not be grieved for and speaking like a wise man, behaving like a fool. I don't deserve that. So Krishna says, yes, there is grief, but analyze the grief. Understand the grief. What for the grief was there? What is the nature of the grief? Why you should overcome it? How you will overcome it? What is the benefit that you will get by overcoming it? Please mark my questions. Why was grief? What was grief? Why should you control? Why should you endure? Why should you leave? What is the benefit? The next verse says, Matra sparshastu kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama sayino nityaha tam titikshasva bharata. Matra, objects, they're called matras because measured. Anything outside world, they're all measured. And therefore called matras. That's why your medicines are called matras, because dosage, measured. Matra, sense objects. Parshaha tu kaunteya, son of Kunti. Why he uses that word, I will explain later. Matras parshastu kaunteya, sita ushna sukha dukkha dabha. Only when you come in contact with the objects through your mind, you experience heat and cold, joy and sorrow. Agama apayanaha anityaha. They come, they go, they are impermanent. Tam titiksha, titikshasva. You should endure them. Bharata, develop in the knowledge. Two words he uses, Kaunteya and Bharata. Bharata, one who rebels in the knowledge. With the knowledge should endure the pinpricks of life, because nothing worthwhile is ever got without enduring small pinpricks of life. So if you want to achieve this ultimate knowledge, you must endure the small pinpricks of joys and sorrows, heat and cold. That is one reminder, Bharata. Another, Kaunteya. You are shying away from sorrow and death, whereas your mother prayed to me, Vipada Santunaharu. All the time, give me adversities. Why? I don't remember you and contact you as closely, as intimately as I do contact you in sorrow. And when I contact you in sorrow, the sorrow disappears. Without you, all the joys are useless. With you, the sorrow is worthwhile. With you, the pain is worthwhile. Pain becomes a reason to become conscious of the consciousness. In comfort, you will not be conscious of the consciousness. In pain, you can become conscious of the consciousness. Therefore, Kunti prayed that, give me sorrow. And you are here, nervous of the sorrow. Her own son. Bharatiya sang, தீயினிலே விரலை விட்டால் உன்னை தீண்டும் இன்பம் காணுதடா. If I put my finger in fire, I get the joy of being in touch with you because I become conscious of the pain. I become conscious of the pain. Hence, for wise people, the joys and sorrows parading before them is a means to recognize the one support because of which they are experienced. You cannot experience joys and sorrows without consciousness supporting them. Joys and sorrows belong to the mind. When the mind is disconnected from consciousness, you do not experience joys and sorrows. Only when the mind is in contact with the experienced objects of the world, you experience joys and sorrows. And as you have detached in the sleep with your mind, you can now detach yourself in the waking from the mind, because you are not the mind. Just as in sleep, you did not experience the relative joys and sorrows, you experience bliss. In waking also, you can detach from the mind, which is the seat of joys and sorrows, experience the consciousness, experience bliss. Not being aware of things that exist because of no mind is sleep, and knowing that there is nothing other than me is called samadhi. In sleep, things are there, but you are not aware. In samadhi, you know there are no things at all, everything is me. That is the difference. So, these joys and sorrows were given to you because you need them for your growth, evolution. Always evolution can take place with the opposites. You need a day, you need a night. You need a summer, you need a winter. You need fire, you need water to cook. Both are enemies. You need red capsules, you need white capsules. You need bodies, you need antibodies. You need both. Sweet pill, bitter pill. You need to exert, you need to rest. And hence, Bhagavan gives you these opposites for your growth. You should keep an intelligent relationship with them. They are passing away anyway. Why are you holding them? Nothing remains with you. The joy doesn't remain with you. The sorrow doesn't remain with you. Why are you holding? Allow them to pass. Be a spectator and see and know the one who is a spectator is me, not affected by them. They come and go. You should endure them, knowing that by endurance, I connect to my real being, I gain immortality. Therefore, we have answered what are these joys and sorrows, contact with objects, why they are there for your evolution, why should you endure them so that you can become aware of the consciousness, what will happen if you endure them, you shall experience the bliss of the consciousness. Right? And therefore, Bhagavan concludes in the next verse, Yam hina vyatayantyete purusham purushashabha samadukta sukham dhiram sumrutatvaya kalpate. One whom these pairs of opposites do not hurt him. One who keeps his mind in balance in both joys and sorrows, that person is detached from the mind and naturally is experiencing the self that he is. The same self, when it peeps through the senses, aware of the names and forms, becomes the mind. The self, when it detaches from the senses, is the absolute real me. That is immortal. So by trying to endure these pinpricks of life through detachment with the objects, you become immortal. You become fit for immortality. Therefore, you should endure. So the whole science is given. First 3 verses, he said, the nature of the cell, it has no death. It only changes the bodies. The next 2 verses, he gives why and how you should endure this order. And through that, how you realize the immortal that you are. These are the 5 verses, very important verses in second chapter. Next 2 verses give the entire Advaita Vedanta. Next 2 verses give the entire Advaita Vedanta. Nasato vidyate bhavaha, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubhayorapi drushtavantaha, anayo tattvadarshibhihi. Na asataha vidyate bhavaha. Na asataha vidyate bhavaha. Asataha, unreal. Bhavaha, coming into being, doesn't happen to something that doesn't exist. Na asataha, that which is unreal, does not know the being. Na abhavaha vidyate sataha, that which is existing can never become non-existent. In nature, things do not change their real nature. There is no hot ice, cold fire. That which is existence can never become non-existence. That which becomes non-existence was never existing. So if you are seeing things, sometimes existing, sometimes not existing, it can only be an illusion. Because anything that is there really was always there. So the things that are moving, sometimes existing, sometimes not existing, are appearances. Water was always there. Wave, bubble, flow, come and go. They are nothing but water as a form. That which is there, all the water existing, will never become non-existent. That which was not there, the name and form, wave and bubble, will never be existing. In between what you see is an appearance. That which exists, the water always exists. That which does not exist, the name and the form will never exist. In between, there is only an illusion of an appearance. Ubhayohi api drustaha antaha. One who understands this statement, the meaning of this statement, that is, existence will never cease to be, non-existence will never come to being. And this truth, Ubhayoho api drustaha antaha, the real meaning of these 2 statements has been seen by, realized by Tattvadarshini, by the knowers of the truth. Na asataha vidyate bhavaha. Non-existence doesn't have a being. Na bhavaha vidyate. The real being does not cease to exist. Ubhayoho api antaha drushtaha. Anayoho ubhayoho api. Anayoho ubhayoho api. Antaha drushtaha tattvadarshini. Of these 2 statements, the truth is seen by the knowers of the truth. So, he has said that. Now he will explain what is this water, what is this name and form. We said water always exists. Forms, waves, and bubbles don't exist. In me, what is that water? What is that wave and bubble in me? That we will explain in the next 2 verses. See how logically it's going. He said there, you must endure to become immortal. What is immortal? He now says here, whatever exists always exists. Whatever did not exist will never come into being. Hence, if something is a being, it as existence is always there. It will never be non-existing. In what we see, therefore, there are two things mixed up. Some existence, some appearance. Like in the wave, water and the form. Like in me, existence, consciousness, plus a form. The world that we see as existence, consciousness is real. The world that you see as a name and a form is an appearance. So the whole world and you is a combination of something real, something unreal. Trying to know this, detached from the unreal, try to tune to the real, is called Vedanta. So this, what he said here, is the law of conservation in science. Matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. They only change their status, appearances. But if something, again a science law, anything in static condition or uniform motion needs a third agency to bring that change. So matter and energy interchange. There should be a third entity to bring that change. That scientists could not conclusively prove, but they have hinted at that. Most of the scientists have hinted at that. There is a third entity other than matter and energy. They use the same word also, substratum. Vedanta clearly explains matter and energy interchange, but they are in essence nothing but that consciousness existence. As consciousness existence in all matter and energy, it is real. As you see them to be different, they are not real. This is why Sri Ramana Bhagavat said, world if you see as part of God is real. World if you see apart from God, it is not real. We will see more next week. Sir, whatever I have said, you might enjoy, you may think you have understood that today's one talk, if you completely without doubts internalize, whole Vedanta is dead. Whatever today is taught is complete. So again and again listen in the YouTube, again and again reflect till the whole thing becomes your own idea. Hearing, you know there is a thing like that. Reflecting, you understand. And ultimately, you assimilate. Hearing, understanding, assimilating. Continuously reflect till you have no more doubts. Once you have this experience of these 5-7 verses, whatever we did, thereafter, anywhere, anybody talking Vedanta, you will have no doubts. If you don't understand them, you can read book after book. You will not be clear. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hello. Hello.
Hari Om, uncle.
Hari Om. Hari Om.